Welcome to Defiance of Silence, a Sacred Witness. This is a space for survivors, healers, and witnesses to share their truth. Here we stand against the silence that isolates us and embrace the silence that allows us to be truly heard. I'm Valerie, your host, a U.S. Army veteran, nurse, and a survivor. Together, we will discover the power of being witnessed and the healing that follows. A gentle note, though, this podcast includes conversations about sexual trauma and abuse. Please listen with care and honor your own well-being. Thank you for being here to witness today's conversation. Hey, everybody. I'm so glad you're here to hear this story. I don't feel like this story needs a lot of introduction. I just want you to meet my friend Lucy and hear what she has to say. And I hope that something she says will resonate with you, because I assure you, just talking before we recorded, I had to stop and let's just get going. But just a side note, without coordinating, somehow Lucy and I both arrived to this podcast wearing red shirts, the Remember Everyone Deployed shirt, and camo pants. And I don't know how it happened, but it did. And it's just meant to be. So I am so thrilled, Lucy, that you are gracing us with your presence and with your story and allowing us to witness you. And we just want to know who Lucy is. So take it away, sister.
Thank you. Thank you. By the way, do you have Crocs on? Because then if you have Crocs on, then
Oh,
we're done.
no, I'm
And then
barefoot.
okay,
I'm barefoot.
I have my feet of Crocs on. So I am Lucy Delgadio. I am born and raised in New Jersey. I currently live in Jersey still. I am a U.S. Army veteran, and I currently work as a program manager for an organization um, uh, under the YWCA of Northern New Jersey called Operation Sisterhood. I'm a program manager. We help women veterans transition out of the military. Not so much right out, because, a transition could be the first day, it could be 20 years, transition could be whenever they need to transition. And yeah, that's what I've been doing these days. Mom of four children, grandma to a beautiful granddaughter, and back in school, taking my time to get my bachelor's, something that I've always wanted to do. I'm studying public administration and government. And yeah, that's about it.
Yeah, you've got
So,
a lot on your plate.
yes, I do.
Thank you
Yes, I
thank
do.
you honestly for taking the time to be here today and share your beautiful smile and your voice with us. So, let's just start at the beginning, wherever you want to go with it. So, before you joined the military, what were you like? Let's just start with that. What were you like before
What
Lucy
was I
joined the
like?
army? Yeah.
So I, again, born and raised in New Jersey. I come from, I want to say, a very dysfunctional family. My dad is Cuban, my mom is Puerto Rican. I grew up in a very, I want to say, chaotic environment. My dad was a drug addict and an alcoholic,
Mm,
and my mom was type A enabler. My dad, even though he had his problem, again, he drank, he was a heroin addict. He still kept a roof over our head. He fed us. He took care of us.
yeah.
My mother, on the other hand, there was a very different vibe with her. She wasn't a very loving individual. So a lot of my love and attention was from my dad's mother, my grandmother, Isabel. So it was a situation times, because I at times felt like I was raising myself, and at times I felt like I was being judged. My mom is religious. She is Pentecostal, so it was very difficult at times to navigate um, things. My dad died of AIDS in 1989,
Oh, I'm so
which
sorry.
was right at the
Yeah.
big, when AIDS was still very
Yeah.
stigmatic.
Hmm.
He found out he was HIV positive in 86, and he died in 89 on New Year's Eve of 89.
Oh,
So
wow.
it was a very traumatic time for me, because even though he had all these issues, he was a primary source of love
Yeah.
for me,
He's your
because
dad.
we
Yeah.
had we had this. Yeah, he's my dad, but we also had this very unique bond that a lot of people, not that they didn't understand, but as some of my siblings would argue with him and be very combative with him, I was more of the person like, come, dad, why don't you lie down? Why don't you go to sleep? Let's watch some TV together until you settle down, type of thing. So it was that type of caring and that type of relationship that we had. He passed away in 89, a very devastating time for me. I had just started art school. I wanted to be an artist. I thought I was going to be like a fusion of Andy Warhol and Basquiat, with and a little Frida there because I'm
Mm-hmm.
Latina.
Mm-hmm.
So I that didn't happen. That clearly didn't happen. I still putz around with art. I do a lot of photography now, something that I've as I've gotten older, I really appreciate more photography. But I went to art school for just one semester. And then when my dad died, it became very difficult in my household, especially because at the time, AIDS was still not being covered by medical
Right.
insurance. So it really drained my family. So I had to find other means. My sister was in school and she was already way ahead of me. So, I said, I'll take a step back and I'll find some way, to eventually go back to school. Um, I ended up working at a record store. I loved it, because I love music, but it wasn't enough. I really wanted to be more purposeful. So I decided to reach out to both of my brothers, who were both serving at the time. My one brother is a Marine, and my other brother is in the army. Was in the army. So I kind of questioned them of like, what branch was going to be more me than
Mm-hmm.
anything else. Um, Believe it or not, I almost went to the Marines, but I went with the Army because of the shorter boot camp. That's the
Hey,
only reason.
that
That's
is
why
an
I couldn't.
important decision.
Yeah, I couldn't see myself doing 12 weeks in Paris
Yeah,
Island or
that's a
something
long
like that.
time.
It's a long time. But also, I was that like New York City, like bougie type of girl. I mean, I wasn't very like frilly and girly, but my mentality was very artsy and different.
Mm-hmm.
I'll tell you a funny story. When I got to boot camp and they're issuing all our supplies, I said to the supply sergeant, I go, everything's green. And he looked at
You did
me.
not.
Yeah, I said everything's green. And he goes, no, I have some pink in the back. He goes, everything's green. And so that was like that stuck. So they called me like I got a lot of Private Benjamin,
Yeah.
comments
Yes. Classic.
like,
Yes.
oh my God, you want me to get dirty? Like, oh my God, I'm going in that mud pot. That's so it was me like that. So my so that was my like kind of persona at in the military. I started off as a Morse code interceptor, and that was my first MOS. And then they abolished the MOS and I became a 75 Bravo, 71 Lima. So I was an admin. I got sent overseas. I was in Germany and then Desert Storm started. It was very interesting because my brother was my recruiter.
Oh, really?
So yeah, my brother was my recruiter, and he kept on saying to me, "Don't worry, there's no war situation going to take place." And boom, I
Yep.
get to AIT, and everybody is like,
Congratulations. Yeah.
"Congratulations, we're going into
Mm,
war," and it was
mm.
very interesting. So I got shipped to Germany, and in Germany, I still had that like New York party girl mentality. Um, and then things took a shift when I was assigned. I was with a finance unit, and I was the only clerk in there. So they were trying to find someone to mentor me because they were, considering me, for different, rank and stuff like that. So they found someone within. I was in fifth corps, and they found someone that could be like my mentor, and that's when things just started to kind of change for me. And I, not that I didn't see the ugly during AIT and basic, because I did, the sexual innuendos,
Yep.
the racial slurs, because I got a
Yeah.
lot of those.
Yeah.
I got a lot. Like, it was very interesting. I barely got any racial slurs growing up. I grew up in a very white town here in New Jersey. I was one of the few Latinas in school. And, I heard once in a while, but nothing that was
Yeah.
gravely insulting. But then I got to the military and I realized their tactics of
Mm.
how they spoke to you and what they said to you. And then, when I went to Germany, it was very, very prevalent. And then, I was assaulted. And I went through this phase after my assault where I was very, very jaded, in a sense that I went from being very social and very connected to everybody, and then I completely disconnected.
Yeah. I mean,
And
it
I
takes
would,
something from you.
yeah, and
Yeah.
it, I'm glad you said that, because I look at myself. I have a picture, and the picture I have is me right after my assault,
Oh, that makes me
and and
cry. Yeah.
and my face looks like I look like a completely different person.
Yeah. I'm so
And
sorry that happened to you, Lucy.
yeah, no, and the what really was interesting is that I grieve that girl.
Yes. I'm so
Like,
glad you said that. That's
I,
necessary too. Yeah.
yes, I grieve her because I miss her,
Yeah.
in a sense. I
Mm.
miss that, passion that I had for things, and I miss, the attitude. I miss, her, spunkiness and things to that nature, which I sometimes show up, but sometimes she doesn't show up.
Yeah.
And then I reported it. It was neglected.
Yeah.
And again, I was the unit clerk.
Yeah.
So slowly but surely, they started taking privileges away from me.
Ugh.
And then I found out I was pregnant.
Wow.
And then in the late, in the early 90s and the 80s, um, when you were pregnant, you were unfit. You were designated unfit to serve
Right.
if you were single. So they discharged me under pregnancy.
Was that
And
an honorable discharge?
it was an honorable discharge,
Okay, good.
but honorable, and they took away my GI Bill, and they took away any VA benefits. So what they did was they rolled me over from active to inactive reserves. And I would report to my reserve unit like once in a while throughout the years that I
Mm-hmm.
had of my reserve committed, but I had no access to any benefits. So I came back even more like
Oh, Lucy.
and
Yeah,
I don't want to say destitute, but I came back and I struggled. My
sure.
transition was not easy.
Sure.
And then, I'm instantly a mom. So it was a very unique situation for me.
Yeah.
But I think my struggle was when I saw my DD 214, and when you see your chapter, why your discharge, and my discharge reads pregnancy.
Oh my goodness.
And how do you explain that to people? You know what I mean? So what I decided to do was, if you knew me personally, you knew that I was in the military. If you didn't know me personally and you were just meeting me, you would never know that I was in the
Yeah.
military, because I wouldn't want to. I did not share my DD 214 openly until about 2014,
Wow, Lucy. We share
because
that. We have that in common. Same.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I didn't want to, because it was interesting when I decided to gain my benefits, and they sent me to a VSO, and the VSO goes to me, "Oh my God, I've never seen this type of DD 214." And then I said, "You know what? Give me my DD
Oh
214."
gosh.
I called the person that had recommended the
Oh
VSO,
boy.
and I said, "I can't work with them because I don't need to explain. anything.
Yes, ma'am.
So, so
Can
then,
can I pause you and ask you how old
yeah,
you were? How old were you when you got
I
out?
was I was 21.
Okay.
I was 21
Okay, thank you.
because I joined on the eve of turning 18.
Okay.
I was like a younger
Mm-hmm.
senior type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So my mom actually signed for me to leave because I left in August. My birthday's in September. So it was very like a tight time frame that they allowed it to take
Yeah.
place.
So essentially
Um,
you were in the military just long enough to go through basic AIT, go to your first duty station, and
that's it.
then this is what happens. Okay.
Hmm.
Wow.
This is what happens. And but then, that veteran identity, I didn't start carrying that veteran identity until about 2014. Once in a while, if, say, for instance, there was like a Veteran Day event at my kids' school, my kids would say, Mom, you're a veteran, why don't you come? And I would go. But that was the extent of it. Like, that was the extent of my, veteran, story.
Mm-hmm.
And then in 2014, I ran into a high school friend of mine who was a Marine. And he was like, what are you doing in the veteran space? And I said, absolutely nothing. And then he was like, you should join a veteran service organization. And I told him, I really don't want to. But he said, your story, I had explained to him what happened to me. And he goes, women need to be around more women like you.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay. So I joined a veterans service organization, but I still really wasn't talking about military sexual trauma.
Mm-hmm.
So then, in joining this veteran service organization, I started learning more about the struggles of veterans. I started realizing that things that I was seeing or things that I was experiencing, I just wasn't putting two and two together with,
Yeah.
why am I,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes crying in a closet, or why am I doing
Gosh.
certain things?
Yeah. And
So
you feel like
then,
you're completely alone, like something is inherently wrong with
exactly,
me. No one else
something
is
is
experiencing this.
now the horrible thing about things was, my first marriage, my ex-husband, I didn't talk, I never told anybody.
Yeah.
And I told my mother what had happened to me, and she told me never to say about it because it was
Mm,
more of, she placed more blame on me, and she kind of
yeah.
shamed me
Oh,
for that.
ouch. Yeah.
She kind of shamed me with a sense of like, you didn't complete what you were supposed to do.
Yeah. Oh,
So that was that type of system. And so as I again joined this veteran service organization, and they asked me to be part of like leadership and things to that nature here in New Jersey, I again started learning about things going on in the veteran space. So I started like dabbling into advocacy. Now, mind you, here I am advocating for women who don't have VA benefits, don't have this, don't have that, and I didn't have them. So I started really doing a lot of work here in New Jersey around homeless women veterans
mm,
and the lack of specialized care in the VA system here in New Jersey. So that's how my advocacy started. Like, it wasn't in any way, shape, or form talking about MST.
ah,
But then in 2016, 2017, I was at work. I was working in the corporate world, and I had a confrontation with my director, and he berated me in such a way that completely triggered me
mm,
and brought me back to the military.
yeah.
And I was driving home. And as I was driving home, I felt like my chest was really like heavy. And I was like, whoa, this doesn't feel right. The next day I go to work and there's still confrontation with this director. And I was running an event in this really large conference room. And I was working with another tech, and he looked at me and he goes, He goes, "Are you okay?" And I said, "Why?" He goes, "You look gray." He
Oh,
goes, "Your face looks gray."
oh my
And he
goodness.
goes to me, "Let me touch your hand." And my hands were like clammy. And he goes, "Why don't you go to the bathroom, try to like put water on your face and stuff like that?" So I did that. I came back and then I had like a massive panic attack.
Mm,
And I went to the hospital. And when I told them that I was having tightness on my chest, they thought I was having a heart attack. So they did all the workup for the heart attack. At that point, my husband comes in, and the doctor comes in and goes, "Nothing's wrong with your heart. We just think you're having some sort of like panic or episode. You know,
ugh.
are you stressed at work?" And I said, "Yes."
Yeah.
So
Oh,
then my husband, they go, oh, the PA, the physician assistant comes in. He goes, "I'm going to start your discharge paper from the ER." So my husband decided to follow her and he said, "Could I speak to you?" And she said yes. And she goes, "My wife is a veteran. She doesn't talk about it. I have a feeling something happened to her and she
mm,
just doesn't want to talk about it." So she came back in, and my husband left the room, and she goes, "Oh, your husband just told me you're a veteran." And I said, "Yeah." And she said, "Do you want to talk about anything?"
mm,
And then, that's when we talked. And
mm.
then she goes to me, "Has anybody ever talked to you about PTSD?" And I said, "No." And she goes to me, "You have PTSD." And she goes, "What you experienced was a very high level anxiety attack." And I was like, whoa. And they put me on meds and I changed and I changed not in a positive way,
Yeah.
let's just say. I was like almost 300 pounds and I was just really miserable. You know what I mean? But then I like woke up one day and I said, "I don't want to be this way. Like I can't, like I not that I felt like I was gonna harm myself, but I felt like I was gonna harm myself." And
Yeah.
I don't know if that makes
It
sense.
does make sense.
You
Yeah.
have
I
this
think I think
you
our
have
listeners
this fear.
probably are going, yeah, that makes
Yeah,
sense.
it just makes sense. So I made the decision of calling my psych provider at the time that I had. And again, this wasn't a VA thing
Right.
because I still hadn't had
Right.
VA.
Yeah.
I went to the psych provider that I was utilizing. I went to my primary doctor that I was utilizing at the time. And I told them I do not want to be on psych meds. And I decided to practice holistically. And I did that very successfully for about 6 or 7 years, where I wasn't med free and I was really practicing my PTSD in other ways: journaling, running, yoga, and mindfulness, breathing exercises. And I did really good. And I lost a lot of weight. And I was using the physical fitness and the exercise and everything to boost my endorphins and feeling good about myself. Rolls around to 2020 and
Mm,
COVID
mm-hmm.
hits and I was running like every day and like ridiculous amount of miles. And George Floyd takes place and that's like really stressing
Right.
to watch that whole everything happen. But then in April of 2020, I'm watching the Spanish news channel. And I don't know what made me put on the Spanish news channel. And I see this report that a Latina soldier is missing.
Yep.
And I decided to not watch it.
Mm,
Like I totally washed my hands.
mm,
And every time I would see something about Vanessa Guillen, I would immediately turn it off.
yeah.
So then I do like this every bi month, like every other month check in with someone that I serve with in the military. And he goes to me, "Hey, have you been reading about this?" And I said, "No." I go, "I really don't want to
Yeah.
read about it." And he goes to me, "Well, what are you going to do about that?" He goes, "I know you could do something about this."
So he challenged you in that.
So he totally challenged me
Yeah.
on that. And then That evening, I brought my iPad to bed and I was there just catching up on every news report that I could find about what was going on. And the next morning, I woke up. I changed my profile picture on social media to my profile, my one of my military pictures, and I wrote hashtag I am Vanessa Guillen. And I got a lot of feedback about it. Still wasn't telling anybody that I experienced what I experienced. And then I got a phone call the day they found her body. And it was from an advocate in New York City who is very, very well known in this space. And she goes to me, hey, a bunch of us are jumping on this call. We want to try to formulate some action. Would you want to be part of it? And I said, at first I said, I'm not sure. I don't know if I want to do it. And they were like, Lucy, I really think you should do it. You're Latina. A lot resonates with you. So I decided to join this call. And on that call, it was a Zoom call. I saw like advocates, like giants in the women advocacy space, people that I've, read their
Mm-hmm.
books and saw them on documentaries and things of that
Wow.
nature. And I was like, whoa, like, do I deserve to be in
Yeah.
this call? But I decided to stick to the call. And that's when we formulated the whole action of the petition and we got out there and we started moving. And it was a very, interesting, meeting all these people, working with them. I mean, I was talking to people like 12, 13 hours a day, just constantly working on it and, getting more and more involved. And I got a phone call from Alicia Menendez from MSNBC. I grew up in Union City. Her father was my mayor, and he was, a senator here in New Jersey. And I knew her as a child. Her mother was worked in the same school district that I worked in. And she said to me, could I interview you? So it was me, another advocate, and Natalie Quam. That was like the first time I did anything like that. And then it just started this machine of like advocacy for this young woman and getting justice for her. And then I went to DC. We started doing a lot of like we did a rally. We called for the investigation of Fort Hood um as a House Triangle. We submitted the petition that we wrote, and I was coming home on the train to New Jersey, and I got a phone call. It was Congresswoman Jackie Spears' office, who at the time she was leading the committee, Military Personnel's Committee. And they said to me, are you available to testify? And I was
Wow.
like, eek, like you want me to testify? And I was like, I've never testified before. And they asked me if I could come back and I thought I was going to testify virtually, but they're like, no, we want you to do it in person.
Wow.
So they gave me 9 days to prepare testimony.
That's not
And
very
thank
long.
God, no, not very long.
That
But
is not
again,
very long.
remember, I had never done this before. So thank God this grassroots movement that I have part of, they wrapped their arms around me,
Yeah.
Minority Veterans of America, and other organizations, the Pink Berets, they wrapped themselves around me. But Minority Veterans was the one that really like was up in front and center. And I owe a lot to Lindsay Church from Minority Vets. They're the executive director, and they walked me through this process. And then I went to testify. Now, again, I wasn't open and honest to many around me about what happened to me. So I really had to sit down with individuals, family members, my children, and say, look,
Yeah.
I'm gonna do this. And, do I have your support? And everybody was supportive. Thank God, they were supportive, except one member of my family. And we had a big out argument about it. and I don't speak to them to this day.
Mm.
And that's my one of my brothers. And you know, they didn't want me to testify. So I, you know, went back to DC. You know, ABC followed me. It was really weird, let's just say, for me. And then I testified alongside Melissa Bryant. At the time, Melissa was doing legislation for American Legion. The morning of our testimony, she resigned from the Legion because the Legion didn't want her to testify.
Mm. So much silence. I mean,
Yeah,
I hope everyone's hearing the theme here.
yeah.
Like,
So, you know, my testimony, Garner, you know, I did my testimony, and it was a stress release, but yet I uniquely started seeing my life to change.
yeah.
Let's
Can
just
I
say,
just ask, so at this point, if I'm hearing you correctly, you really hadn't delved into your own story. You really kind of, and I can relate to a lot of this as well, but so you hadn't delved into your own story and your own trauma, and you hadn't had a witness to really validate and bring out Lucy. And so here you are doing this stuff, and I can imagine the war going on inside of you.
it was an absolute war,
Yeah.
a tug of war, let me
Yeah.
tell you. And it was some tug, you know, and it was, you know, as much as I was taking care of myself, I wasn't taking care of that part of Lucy. You
Yeah.
know, I really never looked at straight in the face and said, like, you have not healed at all,
Yeah.
you know,
Because that's hard.
and it's
It's
really,
hard.
really
And when you
hard.
don't even know, like we don't know what we don't know. So if
Yeah,
you're like, no, I think I'm good. And you
exactly,
don't know
exactly.
until you do.
And what was very interesting is that, again, we're doing this work, we're, you know, writing legislation, we're pushing laws in effect and all this good stuff. And I'm advocating and blah, blah, blah. But as I'm doing this, you know, the space and we were getting things done for military sexual trauma, but I was just slowly, slowly,
Mm,
slowly sinking.
yeah.
And it was one event in DC where I really just had a hard time. Like I was completely disconnected to everybody around me. And everybody noticed that I was disconnected. And it was a very combative
Yeah.
situation. And I came home and I looked at myself in the mirror. And then I went to my husband and I said, I need help.
Yeah. I'm really proud of you
I
for that.
I need help
I'm not
because
crying over here. You're
no.
crying.
And I walked into a vet center and I, you know, said, "Hi, my name is Lucy Delgadio. I'm a U.S. Army veteran and I'm an MST survivor and I'm having suicidal ideation.
Yeah.
And, you know, could you help me?" And that did it.
Ugh.
That was, and I went through like a 14-week program and I kind of disconnected. And the biggest issue that I was experiencing in the disconnection was that the Netflix documentary had just come out,
Mm-hmm.
and people came out of the woodwork, like I don't, people got my number somehow. I had to like really lock down my social media
Mm-hmm.
um, because people were coming out of everywhere expecting me to help them.
Yeah.
And it was really hard because I don't want to say no to anybody,
Mm-hmm.
you know, but I had to say no
And that's so
because
important. I'm glad you're
because I
talking about
was
that.
I was falling apart, you know. And then I had finally got my benefits, my VA benefits, my rating, which was something monumental for me.
Yes.
And it took me what 29 years to
Yeah.
get
I mean, we
my
could have a
my
whole nother
benefits.
show
Yeah,
about that, but that's
about
not
that.
what we're here to talk about. But
But that
yes.
but then I had to really disconnect from that. And I can't tell you how it felt when people would come to me and I would say, "No, I can't do this. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I can't.
Mm-hmm.
I can't." So you know, I took a step back and I would dabble in advocacy in MST. I went back to my homeless hat, my homeless veteran hat. and my fight for specialized services hat. And the MST was very, advocacy was very pick and choose.
Yeah.
And I did that because it was self-preservation for myself.
Yeah.
Because if I didn't do that, Val, I probably would have ended up killing myself.
Yeah.
And I say that very, very openly. I know
Yes, and
it's
thank you for
Suicide
your
Awareness
honesty
Month.
because there's such a stigma, and that is exactly why defiance of silence exists. Like it chokes me up
Right,
because if we can't say that and be seen,
right,
then what are we
right.
doing? Yeah.
So that was a really trying time
Mm,
where I looked at myself in the mirror and said, my God, like, how did I allow myself to get this far in this hole? And my first 2 weeks of the MST program were incredibly difficult.
sure.
Like, all the work that the therapists and the clinicians would have me do, I wouldn't do. Like, because I was not accepting anything they were
Yeah.
telling me.
Were you in denial that you needed this help, or were you more like I don't deserve this help? Like where was that coming from, do you think?
It was both.
Yeah.
I was denying that I needed this help,
Mm-hmm.
but I also was in this state of like, like why? Like, why is this happening?
Mm-hmm.
Why did I do this to myself?
Mm-hmm.
Why I felt like the world was incredibly against me, you know?
Yeah.
And I quit my job. I had this like really great job. I quit it and I just focused on myself. That was it. And it was a tough time. It was a really tough time. I disconnected myself from other advocates. I was like, don't want to talk to you.
Yeah.
Like, it was like I felt like even though I disconnected myself, I felt like nobody cared. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that makes sense to anybody, but that's what made sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
And then, I really started practicing therapy. And again, I was still practicing my yoga. I wasn't running as much because mentally I couldn't put my run hat on. But then I made a really huge decision, and that was to go back on meds.
Yeah, that is a
And
big
that
decision for you for
and
sure.
and that was a
Yeah.
very, very big decision. And I didn't want to go back on meds, but I had to go back on meds. And I say that in a way that I sat down with my provider, my VA. I was going to the VA, and I told them, please help me find the minimum. Like, don't put me
Yeah.
on this cocktail.
Yeah.
Just help me find the minimum. How could you work with me to
Mm-hmm.
just find what's going to help me feel better about myself?
Yeah.
And thank God they listened to me, because and I had the right provider, because I know people that have asked their providers the same thing and they're like, no, you have to take X, Y, and Z and
Mm-hmm.
this.
Mm-hmm.
So thank God I had a compassionate provider
Yeah.
that said, okay, Lucy, I'll work with you. And I tried different, things. And now I could openly say that I'm on one psych med a day. That's all I take. But it definitely helps me. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? It definitely, definitely helps me. And I take care of myself differently. I'm not running these days because I had an injury. And I first broke my shoulder. So that took me off the road
Oh
for
my
like
goodness.
12. I tripped over my dog. It was the funniest thing in the world, but I tripped over my dog.
There's some statistics about that,
Yeah,
just
and
so
like
you
I
know.
fell the way I fell back and I broke my shoulder.
Oh my goodness.
But then I experienced like fall fear, like road fear. So
Mm,
I go back into like I'll do a 5K here, I'll do a 5K there. But now I'm like I walk. I do these like
walking is very
very,
good for you.
very, very long walks. But the really important piece of the puzzle of the walks is that my husband comes with me
Oh,
and he helps me decompress. And he goes through this, like we do these talks. walks, and how was your day? And I do the same thing for him. And we do those walks are for us. And it's interesting because we could be on vacation and we still find a time to take those walks. And if we're, down the shore, we take that walk on the beach. And if we go to Vegas, we walk on the strip. And like we wake up at like 5:30 in the morning, the strip is completely empty, and it's like these amazing walks.
Oh,
So I give myself that. I still journal. I practice my yoga, my yin yoga, and I practice my breathing. I'm really focusing on my breath these days. Very, very, very long sessions of breath work
mm-hmm,
on my own,
mm-hmm.
because it really helps me feel grounded. And I start my morning with breath work. I end my day with breath work. And I really found that
Yeah, that's
that's
beautiful.
my healing. I've been doing some more MST, advocacy, but I pick and choose.
Yeah,
But what I appreciate is that the community knows that
mhm.
I'm picking and choosing,
Yeah,
because I was able to talk to people and they're aware of
yeah.
how my advocacy has to look like. But, I went back to school. So I'm a college student now.
That's so
Um,
cool.
I found this great job that helps me help women veterans
Yeah,
in other ways. But I really am giving myself more grace.
yeah.
And that's something that I definitely was not doing at all. And I look at my mirror more often and see more happy than sad.
Yeah, that's
And
beautiful.
that's the way that's basically it. And it makes me feel like a better human being.
Yeah.
But I could say that I'm still helping others,
Hmm.
but I'm helping myself more.
Yeah, and that's important because if you can't put your own oxygen mask on, we say this all the time, right?
Yeah.
You can't put your own oxygen mask on, you can't help anybody else. And it's noteworthy in your story. And Lucy, thank you for sharing all of that. I know that somebody is going to hear exactly what they need in that, including myself. So thank you.
You're welcome.
And it's interesting that I'm just kind of taking these mental notes as you're talking about. Originally, you said that you reported and they did nothing and you were silenced, and you told your mom and then you were silenced. And so I see this like, I can just literally picture you like you weren't afraid to speak the truth. Like you weren't silenced until you were forced to be silent and you had to go inward. And there's a price tag on your body when that happens, right? So you also had to persevere through that. You had a child, you've lived life and you were doing okay until you weren't anymore. And I think that's so common. That's my story. That's so many stories. And we heal by helping others, but there's a price tag to it. And if you haven't done the work yourself, I know I can speak for myself. I was quite delusioned that I was helping people. And it's not to say that you didn't help people and I didn't help people on certain walks and journeys, because you did help me. And just to share with you a little bit of the story where our stories intersect. And I don't know if you even know this, but um, me too, with the Vanessa Guillen story, like my kind of beginning of the end of feeling like this and wanting to get better was that same story. And I did the same thing, Lucy. That's why I was sitting here crying when you were saying that. Like I did the same thing. I couldn't look at it. And I was like, I can't look at this because if I look at this, it's going to come out and I can't do it. And uh, it kills me. It just kills me because the day that I decided to come out and say this happened to me too, I did the same thing. I changed my social media to I am Vanessa. Like, can't make that up.
No.
And that was like same thing. I got some support and it was like, oh, and then people are like, I don't know if I should talk to you. Like, what do you do? And I didn't know what to do with myself either. So much like you, I struggled with that. But then the documentary came out, and this is where the fact that nobody knew what was going on with you, nobody meaning me. I didn't know what was going on with you. I didn't know you, but I watched that documentary and was like, holy crap, like these women got to work. And it was so inspiring to me. And it helped spur me on my journey. So, like, no matter what you were going through at that time, it wasn't for nothing. Like, your change affected me. And like, it's amazing. And all of the other women, the Pink Berets, and everybody else that was involved in all of this work, we all pay a price for advocacy, and there's seasons for it. And I think we do the best we can with the thinking that we have. And we arrive to a place of having grace for ourselves. And I just heard a beautiful story that that's exactly what you did. And you're blooming right
Yeah.
where you're planted now. And it looks good on you. So I'm
Thank you.
just so
Thank
honored
you.
that you would share this
Thank
story
you.
with us.
But one thing I want to say is that, when I met you, you know, I was in that like half gray, half
yeah.
pink, type of place. I still wasn't quite falling apart, but I knew that
Mm-hmm.
eventually I was going to start
Mm-hmm.
tanking. And I met you, and I remember like you were just sitting there, you know, and everybody was chatting around you. We were at the retreat, and something just made me sit down next to you and
Yeah.
say, hey,
And I was
is there
so
something
grateful
I
you did. Yeah.
is there something I could do for you, and what I learned from like you, and what I learned from the women that I've sat down next to, is that all of our narratives are so important. Not my narrative is not better than yours. Your narrative is not better than mine. Our narrative is our narrative. It's our page in history. It's our page in this story that we're calling life right now. And we can't allow the toxic that sometimes spaces create affect us.
Yeah.
And yet we do.
Mm-hmm.
So I could say very honestly and openly that, I know that I was part of change. I paid the price, but now I kind of have to move on.
Yeah. And that's fair.
And
Yeah.
and that's fair, because I don't want to get stuck, because I think in the position of stuck, you can't move,
You
you
just
know
go
what
in
I mean?
circles. Yeah.
You just go in circles. So like, I'm taking a big leap, and I'm going to do a conference in Texas at the end of the month. And that's going to be like one of the first time in like 2 years that I'm going to be up front and center again,
Mm-hmm.
in this space. But then after that, I'll disconnect again, rewind, take a step back, and then, with the right thing comes, then I'll
Yeah.
do it again.
Yeah.
But I can't imagine my world if that wouldn't have happened to me. Like I
Right.
wasn't part of that
Right.
movement. It's been 5 years, and people don't, they kind of, it has it been 5 years? Yes, it has been 5 years, and a lot of has changed in 5 years. And but right now, I'm focusing on moving forward and not being stuck. And yeah, that's basically where I'm at right now. Just continue to move forward.
That's amazing. So, what would you say if somebody's listening to your story and listening to all of this, and it's a lot to take in? And what's one thing you would want the listeners to take away from your story?
Is give yourself grace.
Yes.
Give
Awesome.
yourself grace,
Yeah.
because you are a tool. And if you don't protect your tool, and you don't take care of your tool, and you don't harness your tool, you're not going to be, you're not going to give yourself any type of grace.
Yeah.
Um, Taking care of yourself is so, so important.
It is.
And again, I learned that I don't have to be so hard on myself.
Can I get some yoo-hoos and claps for that? Everybody, right now, together. Yes.
Yeah, yeah,
Yay.
you don't,
Yes. You
and I
don't.
think you don't have to be
And
so
we
hard
are
on
so good
yourself.
at doing that to
Oh yeah,
ourselves.
look,
Yeah.
nobody's perfect.
Nope.
And I know I'm not perfect. I'm a Virgo. I know I have a bit of OCD, and I'm perfectionist at that point. But on the other respect, I realize that I can't change the world on my own, and I can't make change if I'm not taking care of myself.
Yeah.
And that's basically it. Just give yourself grace, man. It will be, you'll really thank yourself one
Yep.
day.
Yep. It's easy to say that when you can sit here and smile and say, yeah, give yourself grace. And I remember being told that so many times and thinking it's easier said than done. And that is a true story. So
Oh yeah,
thank you for
absolutely.
showing us how to give yourself grace and just sharing part of
Yeah.
your journey with us. I know you're going to do great things in school. Super excited for you.
Thank
Before
you.
we go, I would love if you would take us through just a simple release of how do we let go of everything we heard today and not keep it
Mhm.
as our own
Yeah.
and move into just a space to be present and grounded right where we are.
So we're both sitting. So one of the greatest poses that I do before I go to bed is, I lie still, kind of like in, a yoga dead pose, vinyasa, and I just lay down, palms up, and like if you're sitting, you just put your palms up, you put them on your lap, just gently close your eyes, and just, start feeling your rhythm in your nose, out your mouth. If there's a little bit of a sigh, allow it to happen, and just try to be still. And in that stillness, you'll feel your heartbeat, you'll feel your breath in a relaxing, just becoming more and more relaxed, and just start giving each part of your body grace. Start with your feet and move to your knees and move to your belly, and really at your belly, because as women, we carry everything in that midsection. Bring it up to your heart and just feel your heart beating. And then just focus on your eyes and your forehead. And just a few more breaths. And then just open your eyes very slowly. Make sure you bring your awareness back to where you are, and just give yourself a namaste.
Thank you, Lucy. You're a gift.
You're welcome.
I love
Thank
you.
you. So are you. I love you very much too.
Thank you for being a sacred witness for today's episode. If this conversation has brought up difficult feelings, please remember to take care of yourself in whatever way you need. Healing is not a straight line, and you do not have to walk this alone, okay? So if you need additional support, please reach out to a trusted friend, a professional, or a resource in your community. There's resources listed in the show notes as well. Your well-being matters the most, so thank you for being here and choosing to listen with care. Until next time, remember that you are loved and worthy of being witnessed.